What's up, Liron here, and today we're going to look at the artworks by Chien Chung Wei. What's up, Liron here. Thank you for joining me in another episode of Painting Masters. And this one's gonna be huge. Okay, it's gonna be, I think, one of the best episodes that I did so far. It's gonna be a little longer. We're gonna look at artwork by Chien Chung Wei, a very, very, very impressive watercolor painter. I don't know how else I can say it, but I guess I'll run his works here and you'll get a better idea of what I'm talking about. He's, I believe, a Taiwanese painter who has just incredible skills. I think he really mastered the medium fully, and then he also mastered the mental work of having a very clear and unique vision. Okay, so this requires outwards work and inward work as well, and I don't know how you achieve that, but I guess it's just experience and a lot of years of creating. And as you will see, I'll give you a few examples to support that claim that I think he mastered the technical skills to the fullest, but then also everything that has to do with vision. The way he paints people is incredible. The way he constructs and builds his scenes is incredible. And I think one of the main things I noticed is he's doing so many things deliberately and constructing the scene in a deliberate manner in such a smart way when it comes to the arrangement of the different elements, both horizontally and vertically. When it comes to the colors, it's all deliberate, it's all planned. I really believe that. I will link down below to a website called SeamlessExpression of this guy who took a lot of watercolor painting workshops with Zbokovich and Castanet, and he has these blog posts about them in parts. So he also took a workshop with Chien Chung Wei, and it's just beautiful to see some of the paintings I took from that website as well. So be sure to check it out if you want to read more about how much this person is deliberate in how he plans the scene out when it comes to the edges and the values and the colors and the composition and all of the different elements. So with that being said, I really hyped it up. We're gonna get started and let's look at some paintings. Okay, so let's get started here, and I'm gonna start with this amazing painting that really caught me off guard. One of the things I really like about how he treats it, and you're gonna see why this entire episode is gonna be like a really special treat. One of the things I like the most is how he treats painting people, and he really gives them the individuality that I think makes them look so good. So if you look at other artists that I really admire, like Alvaro Castanet and Joseph Zbokovich, they won't always have this, and David Taylor as well, they won't always have this individuality for every person. And here you can really tell he's basing it off of something that he sees, whether it's a picture or real life. He paints a lot from real life, so I would assume a lot of it is that. Now, if you look at this guy, very distinct look. He has this, you know, the I don't know how you call that sweater thingy, the puffy thing, and then the sleeve outside. This couple, presumably. So just every person here has their individuality, especially in the foreground. And then when you move to the background, you can also tell or make out some details, like this guy here or this gal, they're wearing a jeans jacket maybe, or it just looks so good and so believable. Now, if we set all of this aside and even forget about the people in this painting for one moment, all the rest is incredible as well. So we have, first off, the composition is very interesting in my opinion. We have this stripe in the middle, then there's the water down there and the sky. And what you have to understand is that Chien is a master of design, and I will link down below there's a website called SeamlessExpression of a guy that took a workshop with him. He took workshops with Alvaro Castanet, Joseph Zbokovich, and also with this guy, and he explains what he taught them, and it's amazing that he's really a master of design and composition and making things interesting and having no shape repeat itself, and it's all perfectly random. So even if we set aside the people, the composition is so interesting in how he layered it and structured it. And even if you look at the people, no gap is really identical. It's all unique. Now we have one more thing that I noticed, a lot of plays of warms and cools. We have some cools in the background and the sky, and of course the buildings here, the distant landscape, whatever that is. And also here at the bottom, we've got this a lot of coolness in the water, and then the warm. Now, another really interesting thing here, I think, is the edges and soft versus hard edges. So on the one hand, we have, for example, this building that's kind of in the mid-ground, and it's pretty diffused if you look at the edges. But then we have these street lights that are at the beach. So I've never been there, but I think this is in Venice. Or I don't know, I'm not sure. But in any case, you have this street lamp that's super sharp. And if we zoom in a bit here, you can see how he did it really in one go. And his work is so fresh. That's the thing. It's really, really fresh. It's in one go. Nothing is overworked. Even the background that has a lot of details hasn't been overworked. He likes to scratch a lot, so he'll bring out some details by scratching them out, like different electricity poles and all sorts of details in the background. So that's really cool. There's some birds here hinted at. It's not really even drawing the birds. And take a look at the edge of these spots. It did dry a little darker. No one cares. He just uses technique to execute his vision, and it looks amazing. So we talked about this one in detail, and it's going to be a bit of a longer episode. I'm going to warn you, mainly because he's such an incredible artist. I'm going to just rearrange the camera just a little bit here so you can better see me. But in any case, yeah, it's just, there is so much to look at, and I couldn't bring myself to leave any of these paintings out. Usually I'll really be selective, but here it was just perfect. So now we have the next one. This is a night scene, and again, not a scene that's typical for watercolor painting. I think, watercolor is meant for light, and the more subtle the light conditions are, the harder it is to convey with watercolor. I could be biased, and maybe it's the same for any medium. It could very well be the case, but in any case, this is beautiful, and it goes to convey the city. This is also Venice, I believe. I can recognize this bridge, I think, and these wooden poles in the water. That's really Venice. Take a look at how he uses dry brush here to bring in some details. He uses it a lot to bring in the details of the building without overdoing anything. There's a lot of granulation in his blues. As you can see here, a lot of granulation, a lot of interesting blues and browns and very gentle reds and also yellows, how he preserved the light here. Maybe masking fluid, I guess, or maybe just opaque paint, but just beautiful. And what I love about his work is that it really pulls you into the mood and the atmosphere. So a lot of people talk about atmospheric painting. He has perfected that art, really. Even some other artists that I really admire, their moods tend to be very cut out. So they'll have a certain, like maybe 3 or 4 types of moods, and they'll repeat throughout all of their works. This guy has every scene individually, and it's insane. So let's move on. This is a very quick sketch. I actually did a study based on this one. It has everything. It has edges. It has interesting colors, interesting composition and arrangement. All of the trees here, and there's some people, very subtle. There's this person that looks like they're walking with a cane, and you can tell that from the very far. And it's not such a big piece. I saw the zoomed out view. It's not that huge. It's maybe an eighth or a quarter of a sheet. It's rather small, but it works really well. And when you're good and when you know how to do things, it works in small size, it works in large size. He's a true master. Next up, I wanted to show you another kind of relaxing scene, maybe a countryside view, a small village or a small town. This car parked here. And one of the things that he says that I really like is he says, ask yourself how I can simplify the subject as much as possible and it will still read as the subject. Like what actually makes this tree, for example, read clearly as a tree. And the simplicity in his foliage is incredible as well. Like the only differentiation we really have here is between this tree right over here and this tree here. So you have this edge between them that separates them, but aside from that, it's all kind of merged together, and it's done so tastefully. I love it. Here's another night scene. I have to show these off because it's incredible. I never really tackled a night scene, maybe just once, and yeah, this is just amazing. So there's a bit of a hint of a sign here. A lot of it's not the typical watercolor scene, and so I do want to try and tackle these. I think there's a lot to learn from some kind of scenes that have a lot of mid values and darks and just a little bit of highlight. I think it's really interesting. Notice one more thing that really makes this enjoyable in my opinion. First, there's a very clear focal point. You have the people here, the sign, the contrast. Every person, even in this small painting, looks like an individual. So it looks like a woman with a bun talking to maybe another woman. He has women in his paintings, which is an improvement from other artists that don't have them, because they say they're harder to paint. I try to have always a mix. So a very clear focal point. Notice how, just one subtle thing. Okay, so we have all of these arches here, and they just go through all of the painting. Now, for the leftmost one, he could have done this one the same way he did all of the rest, also well lit, but he knew that having a large shape all across the painting may not be a good idea. It will divide it into two parts. So to merge the top part and the bottom part, I don't know, I'm just guessing what he thought about, but to merge the top part and the bottom part, maybe he decided to connect them with this leftmost arch, which is really genius. But then again, you also want to show it's an arch, so there's a small light bulb there. So there's a lot of thought that goes into this. We can talk about it for hours and interpret how he came up with every idea. Just how he conveyed the top parts of the arch is really impressive. Negative painting, it doesn't look like masking tape. It's definitely just painted it negatively around the shape, which is incredibly impressive. Some small highlights that he may have scratched at the tops of the people. It takes so much skills to create something like that. It's very impressive. Another beautiful, beautiful scene. I'm going to zoom out a bit because the quality isn't as good, but you can tell how much character the people have here. So this may be a restaurant. By the way, they're doing some construction work. I hope it doesn't get into the mic too much. But in any case, there's a restaurant maybe, and the waiter outside looks like he's dressed like a waiter. There isn't a sign or anything, but it looks like it may be the case. If there was a sign here standing, that could be really cool. I think it will also work compositionally. Then there's this guy walking with a cane. Look at the legs. It's just so pure and so good. This entire wall is fascinating. All of the diagonal shadows that I love to do also in my works, but I don't get as close to perfection as this one. Just incredible. The top is very cold, and you can even inside the shadows you'll notice a lot of warm and cool. So it starts cool, then it goes warm, burnt sienna, French ultramarine, maybe burnt orange, something like that, going from cool to warm, I will say this: there's a lot of characteristics that he does that Thomas Schaller also does, but the thing, I prefer his Chien's work just because it's purer, it's less of a stylized version, and Thomas Schaller's work, which is incredible, tends to be a little more on the stylized side, which is why I still prefer his work. But in any case, even in the shadow, you have some warm here and then cool here. This window has a strong blue stain in it, and it's all done deliberately. This guy does everything deliberately. There's no coincidences here, I think, too much. And here there's a strong orange as well, contrasting with this greenish blue. Incredible. Next up, we have this scene that really impressed me, and I did also a study of this one. Let me tell you why, because a lot of it is constructed wet in wet. So if you look at all of these buildings, they're very diffused. This building diffused into the sky. This building, a lot of the details here were done wet in wet onto the buildings. So it's just like an alla prima piece that he did in maybe one wash or maybe two. I don't want to guess. I may be wrong, but it's just smartly built. The composition, the details, he probably scratched out a lot of these lines that you see, especially these kinds of lines that are very light here. Sometimes you'll find that there's a light part and then there's a shadow underneath. That's how you can tell it's a scratched part. There's a shadow underneath. Look at this line right over here that hopefully you can see properly. There's a shadow to his right. So usually when you scratch, it'll push the paint into one side, and then one side will be light and the other will be dark. So I can already tell where he scratched, and it looks so good. Next up. Okay, so this is, I always say, he is so skillful. So if you look at this piece or this piece, it's very impressionistic because that's his stylistic choice. But if he had wanted to, as proof here, he can do a more classical still life kind of work, and it looks amazing. There's so much finesse and quality finish to it. Just good work. I have no idea how he did it, quite frankly. I'm looking at this and I can figure out some parts. I can make out some parts. Probably he did wet and wet, and he charged and then he lifted. But the work process behind creating something like this is incredible. I'm going to zoom out just a little bit so it'll be sharper, just so that you can tell. This is like the quality of a still life made with oil that took hours and days and maybe even months to create. So this really goes to show you the pure level of skill. And then with this skill, you can go and do whatever you want, whatever type of looser, more impressionistic work. So this is why I say he's a master of the skill as well. And then he has a very good and unique vision, I think. Here's another snowy scene. I wanted to get one in there. Notice the heavy granulation here. Probably a lot of use of opaque paint just for the branches. You can see here, this you can really tell it's kind of a dry brush of white, straight out of the tube, I assume, or it could be even gouache, or it could be even this kind of a pen that does white lines, but probably it's paint. Beautiful. And if you notice again the gaps between the trees, it's all smartly constructed. The vertical and horizontal lengths of objects, the angles, it's all calculated. Nothing repeats itself too much, and it all works so well. So yeah, next up. Okay, so I found a few paintings of his that are on location, and I think it's fascinating. You'll quickly realize why he's really a virtuoso. I think that's the word, virtuoso. I think you can say that. So again, look at these scratches here. Again, you can see the shadow underneath them. This painting is one of my favorites from the outside on location series, because of the contrast between that dome that has a very soft top part and all the sharpness and harshness at the bottom. It's just fantastic. If you look at the reference, it's not obvious that this is how you would do it, okay? Some don't do it. I'm starting to play around with softer edges in different situations, trying to figure out how to do that. But really, you can see his unique vision of the scene. Now, if you notice, he painted a very farther away part of the scene. This is very common because a lot of people, when you see it in a picture, it looks like it's far away. But when you're actually there, it's very, it looks a lot different. Everything gets closer or appears to be closer. So it is very typical of it to look in photo like it's a very small section of the scene, but it's actually a very major one. And you can clearly tell this is the dome here, and this is this triangular structure, and it just looks good. Let's zoom in a bit on the painting, and just I'll let you have a few seconds just to look at it. Really beautiful. And I know a lot of people have been requesting these episodes to be longer, so I'm trying to do that. This is going to be a bit of a longer episode, as I mentioned again. Another scene outside of the same place. Now I noticed it's the same place, but you have the dome here that's outside of our field of vision. Then we have this triangular part, and notice what a different approach he took with this one, focusing more on the horizontal aspects, less on the vertical aspects. And there's a lot of things here that I'm not sure it's a finished piece, but I would say it's probably close to finish. All of these white gaps, they just work because it's maybe a wet street, and then there's reflections of the sky. It could be many things. It just works beautifully well. All of the shapes are so smartly, again, structured. We have this negative space of the sky, and there's a lot of interest in that. If you just imagine the sky as one big shape, it's so good. And the people, of course, some wet in wet, some kind of a bit of a dry brush on a wet surface, or a dry brush on a dry surface. Just very, very smart. This one I wanted to save for the last on location because I love it. And notice again how he uses a lot of orange and blue, and there isn't really that much orange here. Maybe he saw something that we don't, or maybe he just made it up like you usually do. But it's very smart, and there's this person here with the blue, and funny enough, he got a figure that has a blue shirt or something like that here. So it works so well. And it really goes to show you that to convey the essence of a scene, you don't necessarily have to use a lot of details per se. It's more about how you build it. in how you execute upon your vision. You can simplify a lot, and he clearly added some more interesting light and shadow conditions here. If you look at this light, it could be the case that the light was there a few minutes earlier and then it just went. But based on the light here, the farthest most buildings, I would assume he made up some of that. So take a look at the painting. There's this strong horizontal line that's not existent here. The awning is barely visible, but you can see it here. Beautiful. One of my favorites, really, of this entire episode, probably. So we have a few more to go through. Okay, yeah, I have this one I forgot about. It was supposed to be the reverse. But in any case, yeah, another beautiful one. And notice you can recognize aspects of the original scene. Like if you look at this green, I don't know what it is. It looks like a market, like an entrance to a market. So you have this green passage. He got that in. You can see the green door. But it's all barely just suggested. And I tend to love artworks that make you complete the picture. They just make you do the rest of the work. It's one of my favorite things, and he does that very well and very consistently in a lot of his work. It just makes you complete the picture. I get worried for a second because this is something, I don't know what, so I thought, is it not his painting? If I ever show you a painting and it's not the artist's, let me know, but I think it is his painting. But in any case, another one close to the finish of this episode, I just wanted to show you because the light and shadow here are divine. I have no other way of saying it. And notice how this horizontal shadow, again, horizontal shadow, connects to this doorway or the arches here. Just everything connects together, works so well. If you notice, there's blue in many different areas of the scene. So we have blue on the building here at the back. We have a blue on this diagonal shadow. Not as much blue on this part of the building, which is interesting. And then some more blue in the foreground, hinting there's more shadows or something like this. The street lamp casts another diagonal shadow, a lot of dry brush in the water, so you have a hint of the sky, blue, but then the water itself is brown and green and all sorts of colors that you'll find in shadows. All of this left side wall, a lot of details, but not overworked. And it's so easy to overwork these kinds of things. It's so easy, especially when you try to convey wall textures. If you just want to improve your wall textures or stuff like that, there's a lot to learn from this artist. Here also a really good part with the bricks. Just very, very smart. So I think this is one of the, or maybe there's three more. So I'm going to run through them a little quicker. A lot of scratching here for the wires and stuff like that. This looks like a rural Japan kind of, rural Tokyo even neighborhood. But I love it and it works so well. Again, reflections. Here, he did something very interesting with this building in the background. First, note how light it is, how it's barely... It's very transparent. This is what I was going for. It's still very transparent, but the top part is yellow, orangey, and then at the bottom he goes into a more blue, which is very interesting because you would think that if this side of the building is blue, then this part of this side of the building may also need to be blue, but not necessarily. So you have a light here, and this part is also well lit. So just a lot of smart work, and you can tell by his details. Maybe this is a garage door. There's some laundry hanging outside, or maybe it's a small market. The cars, if you look at the cars as well, and the woman here, he just puts what's necessary and nothing more. You can't tell what model of a car this is or this is, because you don't need to. It's a car. And this is a proof to show you that you can dumb down an object so much and it'll still look good. Not to talk about the amazing reflections here. You can tell so much about the woman just by the umbrella. It's a transparent umbrella. She has a handbag. She has this kind of a skirt, maybe heels, high heel shoes. I don't know, but you can just read so much from this scene, and there's nothing there, which is amazing. This, even notice how in the outskirts of the painting, there's this detail here on the shed roof. This kind of a wavy metal part that's the roof of this shed or whatever it is. Just works so well. Another one, and I think we're close to finishing. So this is another scene I really like. Not a lot to say about this one, but the colors. There's a blue, a red, orange, some greenish tones, and it works so well. The color harmony is what I love the most here. If you pay attention to the people, there's just a lot there, and it's very simple still. And some people sitting down. This is probably Venice as well, because of these poles here that are very common there, and the street lights. And there aren't necessarily strong light and shadow conditions. There isn't any harsh shadows here, but it works well even for more diffused light. So his vision is so well developed. And probably, okay, so it's the same one? Okay, so I left two or wow, I have a lot of scenes to go through. Okay, so this is just a rainy day that I thought you'd really appreciate. A beautiful, beautiful look at the people here, this couple, and it's so clear. And again, so many artists don't paint a variety of people because it's hard and it's easier to get the more generic figure in. But if you pay attention to the details he uses, it's incredible. And his ability to control the wetness of the wash is another remarkable thing, because on the one hand you have the technique and you know how to, that wetter washes are a bit harder to control, you know, wet in wet, you know, all of that, but to execute that in a full-sized painting and make sure all of your edges are where they should be, that's the real challenge, and he has that down beautifully well. Because you know what parts should you keep wet. Do you indicate the legs of this person on the first wash doing wet and wet, or do you leave it for a later stage? Do you spray some water and then go wet and wet? Or there's so many ways of doing things, and it works well. All of the highlights, all of the cars and the traffic and the rain, it just feels like what it is. This actually reminds me of Melbourne, because I see a lot of Joseph Bookwich's paintings with all of these wires running at the top. It could be in Melbourne. Maybe the picture name, no, it won't give us any hint. But I could track this down and see where exactly this picture came from. But it looks something like Melbourne. Oh, this one I love, because there's a lot of harsh edges here that I wanted to show you. And notice the water, it doesn't always have to flow together, but the right things do have to flow. So whenever, like for example, this entire left section, if he would have done it as distinct as this right part, they would compete, it will be confusing. So he just got it in one big shape with some details on it, granted, but not too much. And then you have the bridge connecting the two parts, all of the boats here. Just beautiful. Looks like a rainy day in Venice or something like that. And it works so well. And here, if you try and read all of these details, it's impossible. You have no idea what's going on here. But it looks so good. You have some boats, you have some stuff. If I zoom out a bit, maybe we'll understand more. This is a boat, clearly. This is another boat. These are some boats. People... and always thinking about the design. So there's three people here. One is light against a dark background, and the two here against the light background are darker, and also a warm and cool play between them. So interesting colors, orange and blue. So everything is so well thought. Honestly, it's amazing. And I'm going to link down below, as I mentioned, a link to some of his videos so you can see it in action. It's pretty mind-boggling. And I think this is the last one. I wanted to finish this with a well sunlit scene, something a little happier, and divert your attention. Mainly, we can look at this and judge the large shapes. So there's the sky and all of the buildings, and then the shadow. Okay, right here. So, and then we can look at it from the spectrum of colors. So you got this cool sky, cool shadow, in the middle strip of light. We have all of these windows on the buildings that are green and work really well with the warmer hues. But what really got me in this particular scene is the motorcycles here. Because I know how hard it is to paint motorcycles in a believable manner. And if we just zoom out, you can't tell anything. It looks like a big mess. It does look like motorcycles, to be fair, but still, it's so simplified and it just works. There's people here. There's a lot going on. There's some kind of a background to give you something to look at in the depths of the painting. And he leaves a lot of paper white, as you can see here. A lot of paper white is left, and it just works beautifully well. So in any case, this is it. I really hope you enjoyed seeing all of his works. Honestly, I wanted to get rid of some to just not necessarily to make the video short, but to keep it succinct, I guess, but I just couldn't. It was all worth putting in, so it's all in here. So I hope you enjoyed this one. I want to thank you so much for watching, and I'm going to now wrap it up face to face. So this is it. I really hope you enjoyed this episode of Painting Masters, really one of my favorites so far, and I really tried to use fewer images, but it just wasn't possible because all of them were beautiful, and I did want to share all of them with you today. So first off, let me know in a comment below what you think. If you're still not subscribed, if you're just lurking, you're just watching and you haven't subscribed or you haven't commented, subscribe and comment down below. Let me know your thoughts. Also, don't forget to hit the bell button because that will make sure that you get notifications on new videos, and I post 3 videos a week so that you can add them to a watch later playlist and then watch them at your own leisure when you get the time. I try to post things that you will enjoy as much as possible, things that you will like. So let me know. Your feedback really means a lot to me. I actually take your ideas as is and put them in a table with ideas for videos, and I just do the videos as is and I just talk about the exact topics you ask, okay? Now, if you want to see a lot of my works in progress and stories and more real-time updates, be sure to follow me on Instagram as well. That's Liron, Yan, I-L, L-I-R-O-N, Y-N-I-L. You're going to see it somewhere here on the screen. Maybe if I remember to edit, you can see it in my channel as well. I just post there, and if you have any questions, like actual questions, personal, you can feel free to send me a message there and I'll be happy to help. With that being said, I want to thank you so much, and I will see you again in another episode of the Painting Master series and in another video real soon.